Good morning, Senators. Nimrod Chappell on behalf of the Missouri State Conference of the NAACP. I appreciate the opportunity to present testimony on behalf of not just the NAACP, but I have to tell you, the families that will be affected if this bill is allowed to move forward. I think it's interesting to just point out a few notes. First of all, as a lawyer who represents people who've been injured, cheated, and mistreated all the time, I don't hear complaints from families who are concerned that their kids have had some lack of ability to voice themselves in a religious context on college campuses. I hear all the time about the discriminatory treatment that is present on college campuses, in our elementary schools, in state government, and in public society just generally. So I find it very interesting that we're here today to talk about a bill for religious freedoms, to have a special carve-out in public institutions to ensure that no one's mistreated, even though there is not some crushing wave of litigation. And if you listen to any of these national folks who came into Missouri to reshape our policy, you can hear clearly that the law has already been defined, and they would like to prevent or forestall litigation. Let me suggest to you that that is probably not what's going to happen. That subsection B that allows for, talks about the expression of these ideologies is vast. If anything, I think that you're going to end up with a lot of litigation, that you're going to burden the public institutions, and that might be the part B of my testimony today, because where are their public institutions? If it's true that this bill has highlighted an issue that is so intense, where are our organizations? You know that they're in the building. They have lobbyists here. They have their presidents who come down all the time. And even though there's been a retreat from the idea that we should have equity and inclusion, and I'll talk about that in just a second, even though we're not going to get to Senate Bill 56 today, I think that we have to be realistic about who it is that we're trying to protect. If we're going to protect the children that are in these institutions, what is it? I think the Latin term is in loco parentis, right? They are wards of the university. The university has an obligation to protect them. Let the universities do their job. I think that not only will you advance litigation, but you're also going to truly reinforce segregation. Now, you ask, how is that going to happen? I think even now that most of the religious institutions that you've heard from today still have problems in their own ranks with inclusion. Missouri historically has had a horrible problem with inclusion, not just from the Dred Scott case where we couldn't figure out that a human being is actually a human being, but you could look at skin color and determine who was and who wasn't entitled to participate in democracy. Here we are asked to pay our taxes, and I understand the argument that this is not a tax issue in terms of how these student government funds are going to be used, but it is a pay issue. We are paying to attend a public university that's supposed to be open and inclusive, allowed for everybody to participate. And the truth is that the religious organizations that we're talking about under this bill have no intention of doing that. And how do we know that, right? They're not saying it. It'll be very interesting when we get to Senate Bill 56, when we get to the next bill that talks about whether or not we're going to talk about 1619 in educational settings, where the national organizations, where the religious organizations are to ensure that discrimination is eliminated there as well. If we're going to do for one, we got to do for the other. It is the golden rule. Don't let Missouri be another beacon or just fall in line with this cancer of racism that is already in our culture. We should be doing everything to ensure that people are treated just like people, not carving out exceptions such as this one.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Well, I mean, I know I've heard of many universities, actually enacting segregation for, ensuring that people of color have the capability to escape other races. So is that segregation not occurring already, but willfully occurring in a university setting?
Senator, you're going to have to put some context to that, because when I take your question underneath my lived and educated experiences, I can tell you that Missouri has a long history of segregation. You think about Milton Turner, who had to educate black kids on the Mississippi River because it was illegal to actually. Well,
I'm not talking about 50 years ago, 30 years ago. I'm talking about currently. It's happening in universities where segregation is occurring.
Are you saying that the universities are segregating students?
Yeah, absolutely. For people of color to have a place to go with their own, with their own race that they want.
Two things, Senator. First of all, there's only one race. It's just the human race.
Well, it's the human race. I
Right.
totally
So
agree. But it's
the idea that
occurring.
people are going to be divided by color, by a public institution. I'm from Missouri. Show me.
Okay.
It doesn't happen.
So will you put out a public statement if it's occurring that you come out against such policies?
I'm telling you, show me. Right?
Okay, what I will show you. I don't have the documentation, but I will show you. Will you put out a statement from your organization that it is in fact wrong and should not be engaged upon?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, I asked you the
just
question.
Tell me, Senator.
That
Tell me what it is that
segregation
you're
is
saying.
occurring.
Where?
Is it wrong or is it?
Where?
It's happening on numerous universities
Name
all
one.
across this nation. I'll bring it.
No,
to
I
your,
mean right now, Senator. If you're asking me,
It was occurring
you're
in-
asking me if I'll issue a public statement about discrimination, harassment.
You said
in
if
the
I can
state.
show you, I will show you. Will you put out a public statement?
You can't even tell me what you're talking about.
Okay.
So show me, and then we'll talk about it. I'm happy and I'm available. You
Okay.
have, I'm sure, my contact information, and I'm available all the time for you.
Okay. All right. I'll be happy to provide that information, and I hope that you will then follow up with saying that it's incorrect policy to have those policies.
Segregation is illegal. Period.
Well, that's what's happening in numerous, and I know I've seen the reports of it. Okay. That's fine.
But
I'll
you
be
can't
happy
name
to.
one here, right? And this is the problem with this bill and this line of bills, is that people are going forward with these talking points, these ideas that are unverified, unsubstantiated, and when we try to get down to the point, we can't even find the facts. So here you are asking me for a statement about segregation and its viability in the state of Missouri right now from a public institution. I ask you for the facts. You're a senator on one of the most powerful committees in the state, and you don't have them. You can't even name
Oh,
them.
I will have them. I
No,
didn't
no,
bring the facts with them.
You
It
can't
is
name them. That's the thing. We're here talking about this bill right now, right? We're talking about a whole line of bills that are going to eliminate the ability of people to participate in a fair way in institutions that they pay for with their tax dollars. And you asking me this question.
Yeah.
Not only is it unfair, sir, I believe
hold on.
it's
I
disingenuous.
asked you, is it wrong to have these sorts of policies? Is it or isn't it?
I already told you that the law in Missouri
Is
says
it?
that there is
Yes or
no
no?
segregation that shall be allowed
Okay.
in public
So
institutions.
if it's occurring, of which I said it should be wrong, and I would hope that you would put out a statement thereof.
I don't even know what. Show me.
Okay,
Show me.
I will.
And
I
let's
said I will
do a
show
joint
you.
statement, because I tell you what,
Okay.
when I find other instances about discrimination in the state, it would be nice to have a senator who's willing to stand up for the people in his state to ensure that the black, the brown, the female, the aged, the disabled, the perception of any of those in the above, including the religious, have an ally instead
Okay.
of somebody who's trying to take away their rights.
So you think this bill is taking away someone's rights?
I think it's given a special carve-out to a group of people who don't need it. There's not an issue about religious discrimination that's fairly presented itself in any relevant context. What you hear about people is, as one of your supporters suggested, is that we should not engage in any more litigation. I'm telling you, this is going to increase the amount of litigation. They say that it's well-settled law. So what are we doing if it's already enshrined within the Constitution and the policies of these universities? And I also point out that the universities aren't even here to support this measure. I think that's telling.
Well, I think it is telling that they don't support the First Amendment and people's capability to associate amongst their faith on campus.
Why don't you think they support that? You would think that there would be a ton of litigation. Show me the cases.
There is a ton of litigation.
Where? No, there's not. They just testified that there's not. They said that there has been litigation in the past, but it fails in comparison to the number of cases that have been brought forward by people who have tried to attend universities, going all the way back to Lloyd Gaines, because they've been excluded on the basis of how God made them.
Okay.
How's that for a religious exception?
Well, where was the NAACP on Amendment 3?
What does that have to do with this?
I mean, you're wanting to broaden the scope of where we're at with, making sure people are considered people. Where was the NAACP on Amendment 3?
We believe that human beings must be in charge of their body as a people
Okay,
who've been
thank you. I appreciate
subjugated,
it. Any
as a
further-
people who've been subjugated
Thank
to slavery and every other vile thing that you can do to a human body. We believe that everybody has the ability.
Dehumanizing another human being. That's exactly right. as
No,
well.
well, that's what happened to us, and so we think that everyone needs to be in charge of their
So
body.
happening to the unborn is a better situation. Okay.
Senator, whenever you want to have a discussion on abortion, we can.
Okay. Well, I mean, you just said your state where you stand. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
I'll look forward to that evidence that you're going to bring forward, Senator.
Oh, absolutely. I look forward to it.
Thanks.